Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. I know I've been gone for so long, but we're back with a new video, finally. I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite reads this year in 2025. I am currently reading my 30th book at the moment. I'm still not finished, but out of the 30 books or so that I've read this year, there was only 6 of them that I considered my favorites that I've read this year, so let's talk about them. So the first book that I want to talk about is A World Without Princes. This is the second book of the School for Good and Evil series. It's definitely one of the most entertaining books that I read. It was just such a fun read, and I was just excited to get back into the world of the series. I was interested to see what was going to happen next because we left at such a huge cliffhanger in the first book. Yeah, I might be spoiling some stuff here, so if you want to skip, feel free to do so. So I was very curious as to how they were gonna be able to come back to the school or like that other world, fairy tale world thing. I was also curious as to what was gonna happen with the other characters because there was some unfinished business going on with Agatha and Tedros, and let's just say I'm a bit disappointed. I'm not the biggest fan of Tedros. I honestly don't know, or I also don't see what Agatha sees in him. Like, even with the second book, like, although we do get to know him more as a character, I just still don't really get it. Like, he's sort of portrayed as this like leading man character. He doesn't give that vibe to me. So yeah, anyway, with the second book, I was just having such a good time. I was having fun with being able to see the other characters again and being back into the fairy tale world. Although there are a lot of things that I do not like, I just don't understand how and why they are so influential in this other world because they are considered outsiders. They're not from this world. I don't know, they just feel so insignificant, especially with how they were treated in the first book. That's like my one and only gripe, I think, in the second book. That just does not make sense to me. Anyway, moving on. Another reason why I really enjoyed this book was the twists and turns, the plot twists and stuff. I enjoy a good plot twist. And again, we left in such a big cliffhanger again in the end of the book, so I really want to get the third book and read that. So yeah, it was just so fun to read. Super entertaining, love the plot twist, love the action, and also really enjoyed not the relationships, I guess the friendships that were like being formed. Like, I know that this is not gonna end well in the end because of the deceptions and the lying and stuff like that. Like, what can you expect with Sophie, honestly? And I'm just curious as to what is going to happen in the third book with her specifically, because I personally really liked Agatha in the first book, and then in the second book my feelings for her have changed quite a bit, and I'm more curious as to what is going to happen with Sophie in the next book. So yeah, anyway, moving on. The next book that I wanted to talk about is Fantastic Mr. Fox. This is an audiobook that I listened to on YouTube, and the video that I specifically clicked on actually had pages of the book, so I was reading along, like watching along the video while also listening to it being read out. So sorry for the construction noises. So yeah, I just had a fun time listening to this. I had never read Fantastic Mr. Fox before. I had seen the movie. It was just so fun to just listen along while reading along the video. I don't know, it was just such a fun experience, and the story itself was also pretty entertaining and pretty funny. So yeah, it was just like a nice, good time. So I really enjoyed listening to that. Okay, the next book is The Midnight Gang by David Walliams. Similarly with Fantastic Mr. Fox, this is another middle grade or like children's book, and it was just super fun, super lighthearted, and very entertaining to read. I'm not sure if it was a reading vlog or a different bookish video, but I mentioned how while reading this book it just felt so nostalgic to me. I felt like a kid again reading this book. So yeah, I just had a nice, good time with this book. I love the characters. They're all so cute and sweet, and the story was just so like heartwarming and super cute. So yeah, I really liked it. Okay, so the next 3 books, they all have a similarity, which I will get into. But the first one that I will talk about is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I listened to an audiobook of this on Audrey, but I was also reading along an ebook to this. I'll have the links in the description if you'd like to read it as well. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. As I mentioned in a previous video, I really enjoy the Victorian era sort of setting in books, and just reading about that time period or reading stories that are within that time period. Just something about that somehow just like really speaks to me. I just really enjoy reading stories that are set in this Victorian setting, time period, etc. I loved not with just like the setting, but the atmosphere or the ambiance of the book. And just like reading more of these like sort of darker sort of stories, I just really enjoyed. And I've also recently found out this is part of like the Gothic genre. If I'm not mistaken, this is part of like the Gothic sort of genre. And I really like that as well, which I have come to find out. So yeah, I've just been having discoveries of what I like to read this year. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why I really enjoyed reading Dracula. Anything in this genre, like whether it's like fantasy or just like supernatural stuff, I really enjoy reading these stuff. So yeah, the next book is The Worcester Whisperers. This is the second book of the Inspector Ravenscroft series. So I listened to an audiobook of this on YouTube. However, unfortunately, all of the audiobooks of this series are gone from YouTube. I tried searching multiple times to find any audiobooks, and so far there's only the first book that I found that is still on YouTube, so I'll link it down below if you'd like to listen to it. But the rest of the audiobooks that I'd listened to are just not available anymore, which is unfortunate. So I actually haven't even gotten to finishing the series because I was on the 8th book, I think. And then when I like refreshed or something, the video was just gone. So sad. I really wanted to finish the series because I was really enjoying it. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that they're gone now. Anyway, so I specifically wanted to talk about the second book because that is still the only 5-star read that I have from the series. So yeah, this is still my favorite book in the series. From the rest of the other books that I've read, nothing comes close to the second book. I will say the 5th book is quite similar, but it wasn't as exciting, at least to me, because you don't get that other POV from the antagonist in that book, whereas in this one you do get that POV. Not necessarily from the antagonist, but you do see more of like what they were doing, because this other character was interacting with that antagonist, and you get to see their interactions, you get to see how they talk. Yeah, you just get to see more of that antagonist and you see more of their character, whereas in the 5th book you don't really get that. You just know that this person is kind of shady and creepy and something's happening, something's wrong with this person, but you don't get more in depth with that, which I think is a bit unfortunate. I would have loved to see another perspective where you do interact with the antagonist in the 5th book, but unfortunately that did not happen there. I don't remember whether it was a vlog or like a wrap-up video. I mentioned how these 2 books both feature antagonists or characters that were inspired by serial killers. And these 2 books as well I would consider them to be more dark compared to the other books in the series. I felt like the stakes were just higher in these 2 books, which is why I enjoyed them more than the other books in the series. I highly recommend this series. I really enjoyed reading this. If you ever find any links to any of the audiobooks, especially the 8th, 9th, and 10th, if you have any links to those, please leave them in the comments below because I would love to listen to them and be able to finish the series because I really enjoy reading this. If you enjoy reading Gothic books, mystery books, I highly recommend you check out this series because this will be right up your alley. And then the last book that I have here on my list, I actually have the physical copy with me. This is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. So this is actually my sister's book. I asked if I could read it because I was reading the blurb and I thought, I think this is right up my alley. I think I will enjoy this. So yeah, from just looking at the back, it already says here, a jewel box of a gothic novel. So I was like, okay, I know that I enjoy reading gothic books. I might really like this. However, in the back as well, it says here fiction horror is like the genre of the book. So I was a bit hesitant to start this because of that, because I'm not the biggest fan of reading horror books, but honestly, this one is not that bad. I would say the level of horror in this book is very similar to The House of Furies. So if you read the book and you didn't mind the horror stuff in that book, then you really wouldn't mind the horror in this. Like, it wouldn't disturb you that much. Another reason why I also was curious about reading this book is that this is like a romance gothic novel, horror novel. So yeah, I was also curious whether or not I was gonna like this book because there is like this romance aspect to it, and I really enjoyed it. I think this is the kind of romance book that I would really enjoy reading, like a romance gothic novel. Yeah, I just really like reading gothic novels. That's just something that I've found out for myself and that I've come to accept. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. This was a page turner for me. I honestly could have finished reading this in one sitting, but when I started reading this book, it was already like in the afternoon or in the evening. No, in the afternoon, I think, on Sunday. And I just kept on reading until like 11 p.m. because I had to sleep. And so I ended up finishing it not the next day, the day after the next day I started reading this book. I enjoyed the romance aspect of it, even though there's not a lot of it, but it's very important to the story. So if you're not a fan of romance, but you do enjoy reading like fantasy or like mystery gothic books, I think you'll still like this because like there's not a lot of romance, but it is sort of central to the book. I don't know. You should still check it out. Maybe read the blurb, see if it's to your liking, see if it interests you. Then if it does, then I will recommend you to check out and read this book. So yeah, I just enjoyed reading this and I really liked it. So yeah, those are all my favorite books that I read this year in 2025. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite reads were this year. I'd love to know. If you have any recommendations for me to check out, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!